Welcome back, everybody, to me talking and rambling and ranting about the Wheel of Time. And we're almost done with it. This is not with the Wheel of Time, but with Fires of Heaven, which is the one we're currently, dicking around with. And today we'll talk about chapters, is that 42? 40, yeah, I think it's 42 to 50? 49, 50? 50, I think. Something like that. I'll put it in the title anyway, so at this point you know anyway. And, yeah. Some actual good there, and a lot of, not so good. So, I mean, right? Cheers. All right. So, this one is basically split in two. First half of what I read today is the Battle of Carrion, which is the good part, mostly. The second part is stuff around Samara and... Samara? I think Samara. Whatever. That town that no one cares about, and then boat stuff with the gang of, Elaine, Nynaeve, Brigida, Tom, Julian, Uno, and the Flaming Shinarans. That gang. We will see. But let's start with the positive stuff, right? So we have a lot of actually interesting things going down. Mostly the large battle. And that's like the first time that Matt actually gets interesting as a character, I would say. Not likable, but interesting. And, you remember back in the Shadow Rising when he's in Rhuidean and he walks through that gateway and gets his spear and gets his Odin moment and all of that. He basically gets like a firmware update when they, put some of these older memories and stuff in his brain, so he knows all this crazy shit about battles and stuff. And this is sort of what we get to see here, because most of the battle we see through Rand. Not through Rand, but through Matt doing skirmishing and actual action, and that's really cool. And that stuff is sort of mostly just well done, and the overall battle is once again interesting. The way people are hunt for, ground, try to cover from all these lightning strikes, air strikes. It felt like a very well done battle, especially with the magic stuff deployed sort of artillery and shit in modern battles. And you could once again see Robert Jordan's actual experience with war in there. And that was just done well for a battle that took 3 chapters basically, with all the other stuff around it. Yeah. That was actually fun to read, most of it. There were obviously, small annoying bits here and there that just, you can overlook. The way that everything is writ way too crudely and too largely when it comes to the whole all the officers and the noblemen, all the nobility knows nothing about war, and they're also super arrogant, don't follow orders and all of that crap. And those are cliches, but at this point they're tropes and cliches of the military fantasy genre in general. You cannot trust officers, and that may be the truth. I don't know, because I'm not a soldier, but it has certainly become a trope of military fantasy and sci-fi that officers, actually, noble officers and whatnot, no shit. And it's usually the foot soldiers, who are the veterans with experience that know how things work. It's something that you see everywhere. The Malazan Book of the Fallen deals with it in a way when they have the whole idea of leading from behind, and the sergeants actually doing all these things to counterbalance that. But you have the whole Lieutenant Ranel plot line in House of Chains, for example, that plays with the same kind of thing. So I'm okay with it. The weird competition and hatred between the Tyrians and the Kyrianans. Yeah, I get it. But once again, a lot of this is just very, very crude. It's not that good. But the whole overall way of doing this, especially Matt's actual leading soldiers, becoming a sort of general or a leader of men, despite him not wanting to. That was fun to read. it was it it wasn't like completely unforeseen. You could basically see this coming miles away and chapters away, right? Because you have always Matt like having these ideas in there. He's singing the Dancing with Jack of the Shadows song all the way back at the beginning of Fires of Heaven, and he has these ideas about military tactics and stuff before. So we kind of knew that this would come at some point, but it is still fun to see it happen. And while I want to get away, and like the further I move away from the thing, the further I get like dragged back into battle. Taviran bullshit is annoying as fuck at this point, because yeah, I mean maybe the whole Taviran thing will get explained at some point. So far we have not seen any reason of why that is the case. So it's just like, yeah, some people are just fucked by fate. And yeah, that's as an excuse for writing a story or like, sort of plot armor, it's a pretty shitty excuse. You should have something more in there somewhere, I assume. So far, we don't. But yeah, once again, that was actually fun. Also, the way the death of Couladin is handled, I really enjoy, because you don't get any information on that. It's like, yeah, Matt just kills him, and that's that. No huge epic fight or anything. It's like just, yeah, he gets killed, and that's it. Matt gets his glory points. Rand does way too much channeling, and we don't actually know what he does. And then people die because of, Samael taking action, apparently. Wasn't that interesting? But yeah, there we are. It was still okay the way it was done. I am not 100% happy with the whole Lews Therin trying to take over Rand kind of thing, because it still feels like it lacks like reason, is how I would explain it. It's like I like the idea of these older, of the older hero taking over Rand, because everyone calls him Lews Therin. It's like, is that such a thing or not? Is he that or not? Or is Lews Therin's memories sifting in? Is that part of the whole like Sidene madness? We don't know what's going on there, and I don't mind the we don't know thing yet. Because I don't need everything explained, but what I don't understand is why no one is asking the questions around it. He's like, everyone notices this shit around him. No one's like, is he actually Lews Therin, or is he going insane? It's like, why aren't you talking about that kind of thing? Who knows? But yeah, it still makes for interesting ideas in the future, the whole bit of like the other character taking over, because it kind of asks the question, and Robert Jordan is not the kind of person I trust with an answer on it, because it asks the question like of identity, like who are we really if we're like stuck into the same stories again and again, right? Like the same with those people like Brigida and the other heroes of the Horns. Like, are we actually the same kind of person, reborn and reborn and reborn? What you might call your eternal champion, if you want to use the Moorcock vocabulary for that. It could be inspired by that. I'm not sure if there are like, I mean, I don't read Robert Jordan interviews. I've got like way better things to do with my time. But maybe there is an like Michael Moorcock influence there. Could be. So you could go in that direction, but it just feels a bit aimless for now, because with people like Lews Therin and Rand, so it's like just not fully there. And there's like a quick aside that I find really interesting, and that's reincarnation. Now, obviously, with the whole Wheel of Time thing, the yin-yang symbol thing, the Wheel of Time, time returning, and so forth, it is clear that Robert Jordan took a lot of inspiration from Eastern, from Eastern or like Asian mythology, Buddhism, and Hinduism, I guess. So I am okay with that. The interesting thing is that he doesn't mention the word rebirth or reincarnation until this book, and suddenly, near the end, like middle and second half of Fires of Heaven, suddenly people are openly talking about reincarnation. And that's just like something that I notice. It's not like I assume it was always there in the world. I kind of assumed it because, of those inspirations and stuff. I'm like, yeah, probably people do believe in reincarnation here. But yeah, I just noticed when it's suddenly people like actually say it out loud, and Masima, the prophet, says it, some others say it, and that's sort of like when it becomes more prevalent. It shows up more and more, the word reincarnation and the idea of people working hard to getting like a good reincarnation kind of thing. So I guess that's one of those famed foreshadowings that Robert Jordan is so famous for not doing. But yeah, it just like suddenly it shows up out of nowhere, sort of, for me. All right. So the battle works out. I'm fine with that. The whole like celebrating afterwards, I'm good with that. The idea that Rand has to realize that his commands will kill people and hurt people, whether he wants to or not. That whole like problem or dilemma that every leader, like in war times, every commander faces. It's at least mentioned, so I'm okay with that. Could you explore that more? Of course you could, but once again, Robert Jordan is not the kind of person who does these kind of deep dives into thoughts and stuff. At least not for the guys. And on the other hand, I'm kind of glad that we don't talk about their clothes at this point or whatever at least he's aware of it, sort of, and we're good there. Then, the whole, like, women, like, the maidens caring for him kind of thing. Yeah, I guess. I guess I'll just have to live with it, so I'm not commenting. I'll not comment too much on it. The last thing there with, Rand about these chapters that I find interesting, or sort of, not interesting, but once again, like, a sign of, like, the general problem I have with Robert Jordan or the Wheel of Time when it comes to cultures and politics and stuff is once again how stark and over the top crude it is. Because you have that whole idea that, I mean, we kind of know it, right? The Tyrians moved into Cairhien, which was already in Civil War. So they kind of took over the place, and they're even more arrogant than the Cairhien. So they, yeah. So that's the basics. And there's like no exceptions. There's like all the Tyrian lords are assholes. All the Cairhien are under the heel of the Tyrian for now. And it is just written, and this is sort of, I feel the problem with it is once again that these parts are very much written like middle grade to YA young adult world building and fantasy. We have to make these things as simple as possible, as in your face as possible, so everyone realizes the general politics there. There's no nuance, is what I'm saying. There's no nuance here, and I'm generally a friend of nuanced takes on politics and other things, in general. Unless they're like radical anti-capitalism, then I'm totally fine with like simplifications. But that's not what we get here. So what we get here instead is Rand's ride into Cairhien, however you pronounce that town, whatever. The populace loves him until the Tyrian lords show up, whom the populace hates, and then Rand behaves sort of overtly simplistic, but it's made out as this like insanely good like intrigue game, the game of houses. I'm so annoyed by the game of fucking houses. I can't even begin to tell you how annoyed I am by the idea of the game of houses. Motherfucker, it doesn't exist in these books. Not at all. This is politics that is no. I once had like three bunnies as pets as a kid, and those had more intrigues among themselves, as more complex intrigues than those in these books. It's insane. Fucking hell, man. It just, I don't know. Anyway, he goes in there. He's like, "Yeah, I will not sit on the throne of Cairhien. I'm not taking the Sun Throne. Someone else will," and we'll see where things go from there. And then he just like does a bit of like simplistic equality, which is all about Rank is all. It's not about whether you're from Tyr or from Kyrian. And I personally agree with that. Sort of, apart from the rank stuff, but we can't have everything at once. So yeah, we get that. Yeah, that's sort of where we leave it for now with Rand and Matt. Oh yeah, I do like the idea that Matt actually gets his own gang. That's just cool, right? They follow Lord Matt now. So finally Matt has some sort of responsibilities and stuff in this world. So I'll be looking forward to seeing where that whole thing will go. It feels sort of like he'll start his own mercenary company, which I think is really cool. He's doing his own thing, hopefully, writing somewhere else. Sooner or later, I expect him to punch White Cloaks in the nose. That would be, well, satisfying and fun at the same time. So, yeah. Well done there, Bobby J. You managed to not fuck things up for almost 5 chapters. I am impressed. And yeah, I think that's something that I found out over all these books. It's like Robert Jordan is good when he writes these sort of innocent, light-toned fantasy with a bit of humor kind of thing, like you get with Rand falling over the wall and Eye of the World and stuff like that. Yeah, he can do that part relatively easily, and he's good at when things get more military. Not the super explicit graphic violence kind of battles, but more like general, large-scale battles. He's fairly good at large-scale battles and war like that, and action like that. There's very little he can fuck up with that sort of action, because it goes beyond a bunch of Murderall attack in the night, and we get our repetitive description of the Murderall with his white, pale, eyeless face, and his black cloak that is not moving in the wind, and his movements that are like a serpent's, an impression that is even more emphasized by the black-scaled armors, like his armor of overlapping black scales. Yeah. No, but if there's dudes fighting dudes with weapons, he's pretty fucking good at that. I'm fine with that, Pretty good. If I say so myself. So let it not be said there's no good thing in this book. There is. It's just not that much so far. But we need to talk about the other side of these things as well. Of course we do. And there's the rub, as they say. Which I guess is not the right word to use here. So, we find ourselves in Samara with Luca, something Luca and his menagerie and stuff going down there. And it sucks. All of it sucks and is horrible. Because Robert Jordan was not meant to write female characters, much less about their inner thoughts and feelings and emotions. It is just horrific. He writes women like 13-year-old boys think of girls. Right? There's that one scene back at the end of The Shadow Rising where Perrin is talking to his young cousin. Is like, you can later tell your kids, and he's like, I will not have kids. Girls are stupid. They don't want to talk about fun things. They want to play the fun games. And that's sort of the mindset of Robert Jordan when he writes about women. And it's horrific, right? You have that whole idea of Elaine, Nynaeve, and Brigitta being at each other's throats for whatever reasons. And I know there are character reasons buried deep within. There is obviously Nynaeve's fear of Mogadin, which kind of makes a lot of sense when you look at it. And Nynaeve's, sort of loss of authority, which she has to kind of deal with because those younger women, Elaine and Egwene, are kind of growing older now. So there's enough reason there to make for an actually compelling character, or changes or thoughts and, stuff like that. It's there. But instead, it's all about who dresses in what way and behaves in what way and being assholes to each other. And it's unnecessary, to put it mildly. Extremely insulting in a lot of ways. It's the image he paints of these women is just ridiculous. It's I don't know. It's just like that opening conversation in that chapter, which I already forgot which one it is. Um, Not price. Oh, right, it's price for a boat. I think price for a ship, something like that. Um, and that opening conversation, which is all about how Elaine is dressing in those in actual trousers, pants, whatever you want to call them, tights with spangles, and it's all about the dresses again. It's like as if that's the only thing women will ever talk about, and how they insult each other. All about the dresses and the cleavage and the legs. And that's not the only egregious thing there. It's just the first thing that we see there that kind of sucks. Because it gets like the impression that apparently women left on their own will just start to intrigue against each other and catfight, bitch fight, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, why do you want to do that in that way? However, it gets worse. And that is the plot development, right? So we remember from last time, Nynaeve goes into town with Uno. She talks to Masima, the prophet. The prophet's like, yeah, I'll get you a boat. On the way back, Grallard shows up, and Nynaeve is like, oh, right, get me a boat, because, whoever gets me the boat first gets us out of this town earlier. And that's a good idea, I think. Yeah. So far, so good. So what? Turns out that obviously leads to war and riots. Lots of riots, of course. And see, that's sort of where I have a problem with this. And it kind of connects to stuff that I've spoken about before. It just kind of like puts it to on the next level. Because what happens here is, once again, the idea there's a larger bit of misogyny going down here, right? So the image of women in the Wheel of Time is usually that they think they know everything better than men, and they need to look after men because men are obviously helpless idiots. And that alone is already enough, because there is that misogynist narrative out there of men, old white men mostly, that talk about their wives basically trying to know everything better, and you can't do anything ever right as a man. Women will always find a way to criticize you. That kind of stuff. That is an ongoing misogynist narrative out there. That a lot of terrible jokes over the last 100 years, and I assume longer than that, have been made of by comedians and people who think they are comedians in their local pub and so forth. And it's terrible. It's fucked up. And that's the first side that we see in this novels, because all those women always think that they know better than the men, that they need to make sure that the men actually get things done and need to be led around because only women know. Only women know how to do stuff. So we get that narrative. And now we come to the second side of this. The second side of this obviously is that, since this is a male narrative, a male misogynist narrative, the actual meaning of those stories is obviously that women don't know better. They just think they know better, and it's men who know better. And Robert Jordan takes that all the time when we have these ideas when, at the beginning of this book, right, when they walk into that town and get, knocked out with the whatever root. Fork root, yeah. You get assailed by Forkroot. Anyway, the Forkroot assail. Not my point. My point is, right, you have that scene, and then the men have to dig them out. And we have later on the situation with Gallard, and it's once again Tom and Julian that have to drag Nynaeve and Elaine out of the crap, right? And we have the next one now, which is once again the thing. Nynaeve thought she had a clever plan, and it obviously collapses because it leads to a riot. And this is sort of, and there's two egregious things here. First of all, we're so a woman had a plan that was actually not that bad, and because she's a woman, and wrong because she just doesn't think clearly, but just thinks that she knows better, this leads to large-scale rioting, including lots of deaths, because it is made clear that a lot of people are murdered by the mob and the fighting and so forth. So technically, we've reached the point where Nynaeve, through her delusions of knowing stuff better than anyone else, has murdered hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And if only she had stuck to letting men do the job, and it would have worked, right? Which we then see in the next moment when it is the men, especially Gallard and the Shienarans, who actually have to fight the way through the riots so Nynaeve and Elaine can actually get to the boat. There is obviously Brigida, who is also fighting, and that's, something. I'm not quite sure how I feel about Brigida as a character so far. We will see. There is potential for good, but there's also still a lot of potential for fucking stuff up. But at least she's a woman that knows how to fight and does not really care about all of the stuff that Nynaeve and Elaine are saying. Mostly Nynaeve is thinking and doing. Because Nynaeve's inner monologues have become so fucking annoying at this point. It just really hurts at this point. But as I said, basically, Nynaeve fucks it up, thousands of people die, and at the end of the day, it's men that save the day by fighting their way through the riots that Nynaeve has actually started. And Nynaeve does not even think about the fact that she has caused the deaths of thousands, or even only hundreds. No, she's like, it was a really good idea. If those foolish men would not have, acted the way they acted, puts the blame on the men again, which is that overarching misogynist narrative that I mentioned at the beginning, right? Which is like, women think they know better and blame every mistake on men, which is exactly what he does there again. And you tell me, if someone who has not had some experience of actual experience of interacting with with women, of the more let's talk about young men of a more insecure nature with little experiences of actually interacting with women and starting some prejudices, right? Building up some prejudices about girls and women. If such a person reads The Wheel of Time, yeah, they're basically fucked, and not in a good way, because you drag that shit into your worldview, and this is atrocious at this point. You'll just feel all those dumb misogynist prejudices reconfirmed and reaffirmed in there and strengthened, because it's all there is in these books about women. And it drives me nuts. It's really, really fucked up and unnecessary in so many ways. Then there is obviously the minor issue of consent again. When Luca is like, Nynaeve, you're the love of my life. I want to take you with me and do all of these stuffs, and I'll make you love me, and you will, realize that I'm the best one for you. And Nynaeve is like, you know what? It's terrible. The only man I want is Lan, because if Lan wants to drag me away, he would just do it and not even ask. And I'm like, is that a smart thing to wish for in a man? I mean, I don't know. That's not how consent works, Nynaeve. Wisdom of Emond's Field. Yeah, I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. These kind of small bits show up again and again and again. It's like, yeah, Nynaeve needs someone to actually do that and whatnot. And I kind of see what Robert Jordan is trying to do, but he's just not very good at it. And then you have that whole thing then he's like, I don't want kids, except maybe for Lan. Lan's kids I will definitely have because he's so masculine. And also would just drag me away whether I said yes or no. And that's exactly how relationships work. Which they obviously don't. But on the other hand, Robert Jordan was at least successfully married to his editor. I'm sitting here alone under my bed, so maybe he's got it all figured out, and I'm the idiot. I am keeping that possibility in my mind for now. Anyway, they get on the riverboat. They ride down the river to Solidara, and they make some friends. And that's once again sort of, there's good stuff on there and there's bad stuff in there. The bad stuff is the river captain being sort of like, apparently doesn't want to talk to women. It's never explained why or what. And Nynaeve just bullies him around because Nynaeve bullies everyone all the time, and that's just how she is, and she gets away with it because for whatever reason. So that part was annoying as fuck. But what was interesting, sort of, was the refugee situation. The idea of Nynaeve wanting to help those refugees, and apparently that's totally fine when she does it, but it's not fine, as we saw yesterday, when Masema the Prophet takes money and riches and spends them and whatnot to do good, because that's terrible, because we can't confiscate goods from the rich and distribute them amongst the poor. We can't do that, but we can totally confiscate stuff on this boat and throw it over the river to make room for refugees. That's totally fine, because it's Nynaeve who makes the decision and not Masema, I assume. But the whole idea of like having these 3 refugee women, what's her name? I keep forgetting their names. One is sort of like a bit stronger female character who wants to go out hunting the horn, and the other is like a sort of maybe becoming like herbs kind of healer woman, and the last one I have no idea what Nicola actually does, because I didn't pay that much attention when she was introduced. But she wanted to marry someone and then couldn't because her lover and husband-to-be was killed in one of the Prophet's riots, I guess. That's sort of all I remember of her. She's a weaver, I think. Something like that. Whatever. Having like Nynaeve actually starting to bond with these women is... I like that. That's actually a cool idea, because it kind of shows what Robert Jordan is trying to do for a long time now, and is dismally failing because he doesn't know how to actually write character development. Which is, Nynaeve will end up as a Yellow Aja, because Nynaeve wants to heal people. And that's a really cool idea to kind of put the emphasis in her character more on fighting sickness and learning how to heal. And it's sort of, built in from the start of her being the wisdom, who is sort of like exactly that kind of person who does all the healing in the village and stuff. It's always been there. He just kind of ignores it for all books until like this one. And suddenly in Fires of Heaven, he mentions that she feels herself drawn to the Yellow Aja because she wants to fight sickness all the time. And it kind of comes out of nowhere. It would have been easy to just like drop in some more hints over time, apart from, she just loves herbs, to kind of show Moiraine that she can do stuff without the bond power. But it kind of comes to the fore now, the whole healing bit, and that's interesting. But the good thing is that with those 3 refugee women and the children, apart from the fact that obviously it's all those 3, we're going to go to that in a second, but apart from that, it's just like that Nynaeve starts to care about people. She's not bullying and pushing them around. She starts to genuinely care about those people. And that's actually really cool. I appreciate that. Now let's look at the children bit for a second, right? Yes. So our 3 women are obviously hating each other all the time and having their weird, like, cabin fever kind of thing going on that is never fully explained, but apparently that just happens when you put like 3 women into one room, naturally, because they're gonna start behaving irrationally, I assume. But as soon as the kids show up on board, all women melt away, and all their like strife and all their conflicts and competition just like melt away like magic, because there's kids around and women just love kids. It's ridiculous. It's fucked up. Because it's, once again, it's like, yeah, no, That's not how women are. I'm pretty sure not every woman wants kids. Not even from Lan or El Lan Mandragoran, whatever. No, maybe not. But here it's like all the women love children immediately, and that makes them happy, and then they can get along with each other again. I don't know. Plus, I still find it ridiculous that we have the whole like Uno swearing thing going on, and Nynaeve forbids Uno to swear, which I'm like, why is he taking any crap from her? We don't know, but apparently he is, and he just says flaming and bloody, and that's it. It's like, come on, this is not wild swearing, and making it this like sort of comedic thing about him trying to not swear, and it's super difficult for him, and I can see where you can take that away from his. It feels a bit like someone who did not understand Oscar Wilde trying to pick up the same kind of humor and then fucking it up because he doesn't want to go where you need to go with that kind of thing, because you're not writing a book for the end of the 19th century, you're writing a book at the end of the 20th century. Language has changed to have the same kind of impact. You need to kind of adjust, and you don't, because you're Robert Jordan and you have not understood about anything in that regard. That's sort of my problem with that. However, they arrive, they are on their way to Solidara. They know what went down with, what's his name, Rand at Kyrian. And we're heading towards the showdown at the end of Fires of Heaven, which I'll read tomorrow and talk about tomorrow. And then we'll find out how this book ends, and whether I start Lord of Chaos on Friday or wait until Monday, depending on my sanity, which is, a sacred thing. One interesting thing that is still in there is the idea with the second ter'angreal. We're coming back to this ter'angreal, right? And for the first time, they come up with the idea of going into the Dreamlands together and not just one of them. Which begs the question, like, why? You had like 3 ter'angreal that can do that crap with you all the time, but you only use the one? Yeah, well, not up to me to ask, but that's sort of what they do. They kind of play around with it. They have the conversation with Egwene again, and it's so funny to me, like, right, we have that whole, like, we've spoken about it before, misunderstandings driving the plot here. It's very clear, like, both all of them noticed, Elaine and especially Nynaeve, noticed that Egwene doesn't want specific things told because she wants to hide the fact that they have, like, meetings outside, or like, when the wise ones are not there. They notice all these things. They're like, it's odd. They even talk about it with each other. It's kind of strange that she doesn't want to talk about it. Maybe she's afraid of something. And no one even considers the fact that maybe, even though you have done illegal stuff, not illegal, stuff that you were told not to do, maybe Egwene is doing the same kind of thing. Who knows? So we're still stuck with Egwene behaving absolutely like shit, and Nynaeve kind of the same way, and yeah, I guess we'll find out what happens with the rest tomorrow. Until then, yeah, have a great day, night, whatever, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.